Hello, I'm professional artist and art instructor Daphne Cote, and this morning we're going to do a watercolor tutorial on how to paint a spider. Please share this video with anybody you think might be interested. I am trying to reach teachers, and I've been doing quite a few of these tutorials in the morning, and I would love to have some dedicated to some students and to some schools. I'd like to work alongside some art teachers, so if you've got a project or theme in mind, I'd love to gear these tutorials towards your students, and then you can use this as a free resource. So I hope that you check out my work and more of the tutorials. So today we are going to be painting a spider using watercolors. So I've got my watercolor palette here. It's a bit of a mess. And really what you need is some reds, some blues, some yellows. I'm also going to be dabbling in some black today. So if you've got some black ink laying around, that would be great too. You can also use watercolor pencils or tempera paints, or if you have acrylics, you can water those down. So just use lots of water and paint on paper. So why don't we get started this morning? I hope everybody's doing well out there. Let's get started. Okay, so I have got a piece of paper, and you will probably want to grab some sort of surface. I am using a canvas board that still has the plastic on it, but you can use a cutting board. Plastic cutting boards work really well. So any sort of like plastic surface that's not going to absorb water. So wood's not that great because it absorbs water behind it. So you want something that's plastic. And then I am going to use some masking tape here, and I'm going to tape down my paper. I am using a let's turn this around here. Watercolor paper that's 140 pound, and it's cold press, made by Canson. I really like this pad of paper. This one has 36 sheets in it, and I cut it up using a ruler as a straight edge. So then I'll just like tear off a bit along the edge to get a straight edge. And it usually does this like interesting tear mark type thing. Looks more like that, yeah. And that's fantastic. Then you just want to feel on either side. There's a textured side and a smooth side, and you can pick which side you want to work with. And then I take masking tape and I put it about 1/4 of an inch down, or just a little bit less than a centimeter. On all the edges here. And that's the great thing about watercolor, is that it leaves like this really nice border, so it looks like it's quite finished when you're done. Creates a nice little frame for the painting. And that's why I like to use watercolor if I'm making cards for people. They're great to give away as gifts. There we go. And our just down here at the bottom. And I'll show you how to take off the tape at the end as well, which is kind of an important trick to practice, so trick to learn, so you don't end up tearing the paper. There we go. Turn on a little bit more light. So I have my paint water here, and it's nice and clean, and in order to keep it clean, I need to use some paper towel, and I wiped the paint off of my brush onto the paper towel before grabbing some more water, because we want to keep our water as clean as possible. So let's see here. We have got this spider as our reference image. Now we need to figure out what kind of size we're going to make this spider, and I'm going to use a brown, and if you mix red with a little bit of yellow and then a tiny touch of blue, you will get a brown as well. If you don't have one on your palette. Feel free to post anything in the live chat, any questions that you might have, and if it is after the fact, if you're catching the replay, feel free to put comments below the video, and I'll get back to you. They're very helpful when you leave comments. Then I know how to improve the videos and what to put into for the content. So I'm going to start off with lots of water on my brush, a very little bit of paint. I've made it so that it's quite, my pool of paint here is really light and watery. And I am just going to lightly start to draw in with my paintbrush where everything is going to be. So there seems to be a little bit of brown in everything in this spider, so it's safe to use brown to draw it out, especially using it lightly, because it seems to be everywhere. So I started off with the edge. It's easier to figure out the composition if you start out with the edges. So I started out with the edge. I kind of know where to put the abdomen of the spider because it's going to be off center. If I look at the reference photo, it's off center of the page. If I drew a line right down the center of the image, it's going to be on this side. So that's how I figure out where to place things. And then right about the middle here, which is higher up, then this leg over here is this leg over here, the farthest leg here. There we go. And to make sure that I've got the right scale, I do like to fill it in a bit. There's no like super whites within the spider, so I'm safe to fill in the whole thing. And then I look at the negative space that's happening between the legs, and that will help me to paint in the legs. This leg comes out the farthest to about there. So I kind of drew it out with my finger first, make a placement for it, and then pull it down here. And then you've got these little like front feeler bits, little leg feeler things. I don't know the anatomy of spiders. I have gone with a local sketch group to our museum in Edmonton, the Ram, and have drawn live tarantulas there. That's pretty fun. So that's always a fun thing to do when it reopens. Okay, so then we have this other one that comes down here, goes up there, and then he has this bit right there. Okay, so now I've got the shape and space and composition for my spider. Now, what I want to do is put in the brightest colors first. It's always easier to mute colors, make them more gray, make them darker, but it's hard to get in the light colors. So I'm going to mix a red, like rusty warm red, with a yellow. Like that. And then I need to pay attention to how much water is in my mixture so that I get the right tonal value. So I'm going to start over here because it's a little bit darker than I wanted it. So I'm going to add some water and rub it a bit, and it'll pull up some of the dark color that I put in there. And as you get going along, you'll get a sense and feel for how much paint you need on your brush. Let's turn the volume off on that. There we go. So getting in all of these yellowish stripes. And I'll just bring the camera in a little bit closer. There we go. So getting in all of the stripes and going even where it's orange in there. And I'm going to do the stripe across. I don't know, do you call a spider's head a spider's head? The front part? And you'll see that the more you rub, the more the paint blends or moves or bleeds with the other colors that you've already laid down. Right over here. There we go. And down on this leg. And a little bit right here. So I feel kind of like I'm dressing up a spider, putting cuffs on it. I've been teaching some private tutoring online, which has been, excuse me, really interesting. Oh, there we go. And it's been really fun. It's interesting. I've been working on getting more stuff online for a year and a half now, so I was really quite primed and ready for all of this. This was just a really great push to push me over the edge type of thing. Make the leap and the jump to finally make it happen. And it's been really good for me here. And definitely makes me feel like I'm helping, contributing in some way, which is really what we all want to feel, right? So I'm just bringing in some deeper red here and going in to places where I've already been. Now this is still wet, so I don't want to go in there. I want to go back to the start where it's dry. So the only time that I want to work wet into wet is when I really want things to bleed and I want that type of effect. And you have more control if you let it dry first. But sometimes people like to live on the edge and be a little out of control, which is fine too. But like you can kind of see there that it starts to bleed in this area. And then I'm going to beef up the color a little bit using less water, more pigment, so that you get more of that orangey yellow feel, a little bit more vibrancy in it. So I feel like the stripes on the body here are actually more orange than the yellow that I'm using right now, the orangey yellow. So I'm going to bring in some more orange for those ones. Something like that. Now I want to go in with, if you want to make a black, what you can do is take your darkest blue. First of all, let's clear off a little bit of the palette. So you can take your paper towel with some water on it and just give it a wipe. And you can get a clean area on your palette. Then you want to take your darkest blue, scooch that over there. So I wipe my brush off of here and then I dip it in the water and then I wipe it off some more. So I'm using the water just to help wipe off the brush, get the color out. And then, so the ratio is going to be more blue than anything, then a little bit of red. And that's going to turn it a bit like purpley. I'm going to add some more blue. And then a little bit of yellow. Oh, if it goes too green, the complementary color to green is red, so to take it back to a more neutral color, you just add red. And then you get something that's close to a black. And you can make it like a brown black, a blue black, whatever kind of black you like. And then start painting it in. So I'm gonna have a little bit more brown black to where it is lighter, where it transitions and gets a little bit lighter. And I'm gonna add some, ooh, I'm leaving little bits where there's light. So on the leg here, leaving a little bit of light in between the leg and the body. So that it feels a bit more separate, because I do see some light gray that happens there. And you can kind of tell, because it's darker, I'm using less water in the mixture of the paint. Now it's starting to take shape a little bit and becoming more like a spider. Getting some darker areas in here. Making sure that I leave the whites though, or the grays. I don't want to lose those bits. They help to distinguish one part of the spider from another. So I'm getting quite a bit darker in these super dark areas. And there's some areas on the edges here that I want to just add a little bit of water so that you can feel how fuzzy this spider is. And then just lightened with some water. I'm going to put in the gray of the abdomen here. And then it gets quite dark as it comes this direction. There we go. And getting in all the little bits, lights and darks and everything else. Just getting lost in all the wonderful intricacies of the spider. It's quite fascinating. I want this to be a little bit lighter, so I'm just adding straight water and pulling the paint around, dabbing the paint off my brush that I pick up, so you can pick up the paint as well as you go around. And I want more brown on the abdomen over here. And then I noticed that the orange on here on this leg actually goes up quite a bit higher, so I'm going to clean off my brush really, really good and then grab some of that reddish orange and beef that up quite a bit more. And the same over here. So you'll find as the paint dries, you'll need to make adjustments. And we'll get into really paying attention to which way your brush is pointing and the way that it works. So you always are using it at the right angle to get the right brush strokes that you want is quite an important thing. And just continuing along. Getting lost in some of these little fine details. Here we go. Putting in more of the super dark black in here. Now I need to make sure that that yellow that's next to the black that I'm putting in here is really dry, because if it wasn't, the whole thing would just bleed and turn into a gray mess. And then I go back into areas to make them darker, redefine them. Just painting away. Creating some texture as you go, so paying attention to how your brush works and making that spider feel fuzzy. Get into this leg by adding more water. So there's lots of grays going on in this leg.
And then if I add the dark to the inside, then it will bleed out into those wet areas. So I just put a little dab and it'll bleed out for me. It'll do the work. The water will do the work for me. Adjusting the amount of water on my brush so I get a little bit lighter stuff happening here. And lighter in this leg. Lighter especially at the end of this leg. And then we'll get into some darker stuff here. So going down and around. And then getting into the darks in this leg. Now that the gray here is kind of dried, so I know I can put in some definition and it's not going to bleed all over and go crazy on me. All right. So we're getting there. We're getting close. So I'm just wanting to define this gray down here. The bottom of that tarantula. I want to bring things a little bit darker. And you know what? I see some blue that's happening kind of on his back up here, like in the middle. So I can add some of my dark blue here on top of some of this gray. And then wherever I see that, like I see little bits of it there, just like tiny little bits and pops of this blue color. Because there's in black and in white and in all different kinds of colors, there's bits of other colors in there too. So it's usually not just straight one color. And that's what makes things really feel a little bit more dynamic. Let's go in with a little bit more black. Oops, there we go. Put some more definition in there. So often when people are doing drawings or paintings, they don't take them far enough. That's what makes them look finished, is when you take it all the way to the end, where if you add any more to it, it might get ruined. Whereas a lot of people and my students that I've seen, they think that as long as everything's got paint on it, then it's good, then it's done. But that's not really the case. It has to be refined and edited to the point where you can't do anything more to it to make it look better. I just about forgot this little leg here. It's pretty important, especially compositionally. So this one here is pretty gray, so I'll leave that one pretty gray, but these ones here are really dark. So the black looks really black, and then it dries, and then it kind of looks grayish, so you got to add those layers to it to make it feel a little bit more solid. And then we start to have a actual spider happening. So just some editing and tweaking. And now that orange on his legs, I want to really like make that pop. So I'm gonna like go all out with red. It's like rusty red color that I've got, a warm red color. Just really beef it up here. There we go. And then that might cause me to, oh yeah, it is going to cause me to come in with some more like yellows, like a yellowy orange that's a little bit more vibrant. So adding the same red that I just put on into a bit of yellow. To get some orange stuff happening. There. I think that's just about good. I don't think I can add too much more to it to make it look good. Curve right there. But that's about it. I think that's it. So we have got a, no, let's put just a tiny little line right there for the edge. Okay, so there we have it. We have our spider. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. And so in order to take the tape off, what you want to do is you want to wait for about 2 hours to make sure that this is totally flat. It kind of, I don't know if you can see it, it kind of will wobble and create these waves because the paper is wet. That's why we use the tape, is that as the water dries and evaporates from our painting, then it'll re-stretch. So it needs to be taped down. And if you don't have it taped down, then the creases, the wobbles will stay there. I just forgot to sign it, so. There we go. So I just sign it with the year. Okay, so then what you want to do when it is completely dry, and you'll see it'll be flat. So even now I can touch it. It feels a little bit cool, but the paper's still a little bit wobbly. So once it's dry, you'll notice that it's completely flat. Then you can take off the tape by picking it up and pushing it flat down, and then pulling it across by pushing it flat. You don't want to lift it up and over, or else it will tear the paper. or if you have like paint close to it, it could pull up the paint. So you just do it like that. So please, if you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I've got a bunch of other tutorials that are free on YouTube. I hope that you enjoy them. And I also have a bunch of time-lapse videos on there of watercolors. And this was really fun. I haven't done a spider painting. Well, not in a long time, that's for sure. So, thank you. Thanks for joining me. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. I hope that it was inspiring. Let's just, there we go. I hope that it was inspiring and that you had a good time. I know I really enjoyed it. You can see my little spider. And yeah, keep going. Send me your work if you like. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, all those things. Daphne Cote Artist is where you find me everywhere. And please subscribe and hit the follow button on YouTube so that you can stay informed with all these new videos that I'm doing. All right. Enjoy your day.